afternoon. Welcome to Finding Happiness in Hard Times. My name is Ken Burtness, and I'm out at Haleiwa on the North Shore. And today we've got a real special show for you on the joy of writing. And we're very lucky to have Connie Hale here, who's the director of the Oahu Writers Retreat, along with her friend, Chris McKinney, who's an author. And they're going to talk to us about how they teach and inspire writers out at the retreat. Welcome to the show, guys. And we'll start in a second because Think Tech Hawaii has to get a quick break, but we'll be back in a moment for the audience. All right. Well, I tell you, we really appreciate Connie and Chris coming out here today because the Oahu Writers Retreat is about to start. It's going to start in less than 2 weeks, so they are very busy. And we appreciate you guys coming out and talking to us about this. And I was thinking that maybe a good place to start is if you could give us an idea of what the attendees have in store for them when they come out to the retreat on April 24th, your start date.
Sure. Well, the idea is literally a retreat. We invite people out to the North Shore to a camp on the beach to leave their lives behind and let the magic of Camp Mokuleia and Mokuleia Beach settle their spirits and inspire them creatively. So we have a program that mixes quiet time for writing or for beach walking, a 2.5 hour intensive workshop every morning, and the attendees select whether they're going to take a fiction workshop with Chris McKinney or a nonfiction workshop with Honolulu's Stuart Coleman, or a poetry workshop with Carla Brundage, who grew up in Ka'ava but lives in Oakland, California, as do I. I grew up in Waialua and, in fact, in Mokuleia, so I have a foot in both worlds. So in the morning, we gather with the same group of people and the same instructor each day to do intensive writing work. In the afternoon, we have a couple of optional workshops, one on bookmaking with Tam Ramon, one on songwriting with Zoe Carter. And then in the afternoon, there's time to write. And we meet for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And in the evening, there's either a special program or more time to write. So the idea is really a combination of solitude and society, with the thinking that we all are inspired by the work of others, but also when we're in solitude and we're in solitude with other people, it kind of allows us to do our work in a special way. There's an alchemy that happens when there are other writers, and in this case, we have some painters too. So that's the idea. It's an intense week. Because some of those times of solitude are some of the most anxiety, as Chris can attest. Sometimes when you're sitting there facing the blank page, it's a lot harder than being in a workshop. So,
yeah.
You know, one of the things that I really appreciate is I've done a lot of shows here now. We started this show in January of 2022. So this is my 32nd show. And none of it has been placed on the North Shore, which is has been my home for over 40 years. And I love it up here. And I think it's very special to people. Could you tell us a little bit about how that specialness up at the North Shore works to help people get inspired and how you use that beautiful surroundings that you're in with the people attending?
Well, I have to say I'm so prejudiced because I was born in Waialua. It's my birthplace. My family lives there. So for me, it's really that place where I touch a very deep place in I can dig into the well myself. I think there's something about the camp that we gather in is right on the beach. There's a picture of Mokuleia Beach. You hear the waves all day long. It's peaceful. It's beautiful. Sometimes at lunchtime, the honu come up and get their lunch on the beach. So you're really in touch with nature being there, while at the same time it's comfortable. It's a little bit, it's bare bones as far as accommodation, but we like that because it really enhances that sense of being in nature. And I think nature just does something to settle us and to inspire us. And the camp is, for many people on Oahu, the camp is a special place because many of us went there in high school or elementary school or with a church group or one thing or another. So it's a touchstone for people from the islands, as a place that, holds a lot of different groups for a lot of different purposes. I love watching the people from the mainland who arrive and they're like dressed up and they're kind of wired up and they fuss about their room and they fuss about this, they fuss about that because it's not a luxury hotel. And then, the second day they start to really like their room, and the third day they really like their room, and the fourth day the clothes start coming on. All of a sudden they're wearing different clothes, dressing really simply, not doing their hair, no makeup if they're women. And over the course of the week, you can literally see people unwinding, letting their hair down, literally and figuratively, and getting to a place that's just a lot less superficial and a lot more about connecting with each other, connecting with their own work, connecting with their own stories. So that's kind of, I'm saying that publicly. It's always been my private joke of just sort of watching people over the course of the week as they settle into the place and become more, take off their shoes and show up in their bathing suit and for lunch. And I think that's part of the magic of the camp. It just allows people to be themselves in a more essential way.
Absolutely. It's interesting that it's so different. And I don't think people, especially on the mainland, don't understand the difference between the North Shore and the South Shore, the difference between a place like Wailua and Honolulu, which tends to have lots of traffic and lots of people. Mm-hmm. And I know Chris can talk about this because, Chris, I understand you live in Manoa, right?
Yeah, I live in Manoa. And, it's kind of funny because the retreat it's kind of a retreat for me too, because it's just like most people, I assume. I mean, I only leave the house for about 4 different reasons that are always the same, right? It's just sort of, I obviously have to get groceries. I have to pick up my daughter from school. I go to the gym, and then sometimes we go out to dinner or a lunch or something. But other than that, it's sort of, ever since, I guess, the pandemic, it's been hard to come up with reasons to sort of just even go to the North Shore. I mean, I've been to the North Shore once, maybe in the last 3 years, which is, it seems silly because it's not that crazy of a drive. So it's a good opportunity for me to sort of spend that week outside of town. Yeah.
Well, the drive, it's very funny because when I got here actually I arrived in Hawaii in 1971, and I was young and my friends were young, and they never had any problem about driving to the North Shore. But as the years went by, that became more and more of a chore. Yeah. And for most people, the driving out here, it takes me an hour to go to my place at Pupukea, actually. And even from Manoa, it's got to take you like 45 minutes or 50, depending upon the traffic and everything. And I don't think most people understand that. But the people here who live in the South Shore, it becomes a big chore to come out here and to get away from all the noise and people and happenings down there. And once you get out here, like Connie was saying, it's sort of a big change, but boy, it grows on you fast because of the quiet and the sounds. And I mean, I've been going to sleep to the sound of the surf for all these years, and it's a lullaby.
Yeah. There's something just to connect that to writing, because of course everybody can go to the North Shore and have a wonderful time, being on the North Shore. But boy, when you are writing, you really need to go deep and listen to yourself and feel supported in a way that I believe nature can allow you to feel. And so I think being in a generous environment, and when I say generous, I mean the wind is generous, the breeze is generous, the ocean is generous, the sun is generous. It's just, it's an easy environment to be in. It does, to me, something happens creatively, or something is able to happen creatively that is unusual. And so that's the reason for putting the retreat out there. Of course, we originally called it the Mokuleia Writers Retreat, and we changed the name because nobody who's not from the place, who's not from Hawaii, can spell, pronounce, or remember Mokuleia. So it's the Oahu Writers Retreat, and it really is an Oahu retreat. We welcome people from all over the island, but at the same time, it's very much grounded in that particular place.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing about, if you're on the South Shore, if you're living in Manoa like Chris is, the fact that coming out to the North Shore for that long drive, but once you're there at the retreat, you're there for a week.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you wake up and, gee, I don't have to go back to that drive again every day, and you're thinking to yourself, wow, and you really get into it, which is really important, like you're saying, Connie, because writing is a strange animal, and that a lot of our writing is alone, but there's so much inspiration in being in a retreat where you can be by yourself or with other people with like interests. And the other retreat I go to is the Windward Community College writing retreat, and most of the people there, because that's only a one-day retreat, and most of the people there come to me and they say, this is the only time I get to write. This is the only time I can find time to write. Where you're at a retreat for 7 days, wow, the time is there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to say something about the pandemic, because I know that this show and a lot of your focus has been reflecting somewhat on this time, this strange time that we've come through, or we're still in, depending on how you look at it. This year, the retreat sold out. I couldn't believe it in 3 weeks. I mean, the lodge filled in 3 weeks. We continued taking people who could commute for a couple more months, but I think there's an incredible pent-up demand right now for people to be with one another. And I think that's what I attribute. I mean, it's really cool because it's our 10th year. So it's great to think that after 10 years, we actually have a reputation and we've gotten some traction. But I do feel that people have really missed each other. And I think when you're an artist and you do work so much in solitude, there's great comfort in knowing that there's a tribe of other people that are like you. And yet it can be hard to connect. I mean, for the reasons that Chris was suggesting, that, really your work consists of sitting in your house and working all day. It's not hanging out with people, Hemingway and all those Parisian writers notwithstanding, the truth is you're just sitting in your chair hour after hour every day. And so, but it's so great to be with other writers, because we are distinctive in some ways. And it's really that feeling of having a community of writers whom you can be part of is such an important part of a retreat like this that happens on a regular basis, or like the Windward Writers Retreat, where it's regular and you have regular contact with the same people. But I think it's all the more so this year, and I really noticed it in how eager people were to sign up, that I think we've been so isolated. And in some ways, the pandemic was good for me creatively. It did. I did so much during the pandemic because I wasn't even tempted to go places as I usually am. But at the same time, that feeling of isolation was intensified, that writers feel anyway. So I do sort of honor the spirit of your program in looking at what keeps us thriving in times like a pandemic, and the way that writing and creativity it has a special place in our lives. And I think that pandemic intensified certain things for us.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you agree with that, Chris, but
I totally do. I mean, I think that I'm not surprised that the demand was so high that it sold out so quickly, because it's almost, I think a lot of people feel that they need something like this, especially after the way the last few years have gone. So it's a perfect time to do a writer's retreat, I think.
Mhm.
Well, let's go back to the fact that, if I'm in part of the audience and I'm listening to you guys, I'm really enthused about coming out and being part of it. And it's like you say, it's all sold out. Maybe you guys could give us a little preview of what you're going to do in the 11th year for 2024 that might get the people who are watching enthused and to call up and say, hey, sign me up for next year.
Well, first of all, I want to say that both Tuesday night and Wednesday night in the evening, the program is open to the public. So Tuesday night, we're going to have a faculty reading. Each faculty's member is going to just read something short from their own work, and we'll have a chance to get to know these writers. And we have such a great collection of writers who come to teach. So that's open to the public. And Wednesday night, when Miliana Aluli-Meyer comes to speak, that's also open to the public. And so those programs are from 7 to 8:30. We welcome people. And then we initiated something new this year, which is the retreat itself is from Monday through Friday for the people who come every day and stay at the camp. But we added a 6th day, Saturday, which you can do sort of on an a la carte basis. So you can come on Saturday and have a full day of workshops without having been there during the week. And the reason to do that was both to allow more people to experience the riches that we've gathered, but also in acknowledgement of the fact that a lot of people just have to work and can't take the week off, but we still want to make ourselves available to them, give them access to the resources, or maybe just dip a toe in. And then if it feels right, they can come next year. And if somebody were watching this and we're just really dying to come, just get in touch with me. You can come on Saturday. I'm absolutely happy to keep that registration open a little longer if it means that some people who really want to try this out have that opportunity. Next year, we'll do the same thing, but I'm also hoping, I did a little experiment in November, and I'm going to, I hope, continue it, where in November of every year, right after Thanksgiving on that long weekend, I'm going to have a day-long workshop, or really a day and a half in Waialua, mostly for island people, because nobody's going to fly to Hawaii just for a day and a half. So I do realize that there is that demand or that desire, and maybe some people don't want to make the big commitment, both financial time and energy, of coming for a week in April. So I'm trying to come up with something that's a little more friendly to working people in Hawaii who nevertheless want to have the opportunity to meet other writers, gather together on the North Shore, and have a little mini retreat. So people can look forward to that in November if they're interested.
That sounds terrific. Can you give us an idea of some of the things you might try to do in November? Different kinds of workshops or focus?
Well, Chris, Chris and I think Chris teaches a lot and is a wonderful teacher. So there's there are two kinds of workshops in my mind when you're talking about writers' workshops. One is a generative workshop where you come, you don't have anything in mind. You come open and the instructor gives a prompt or two. You go out and write, and then you come back and you read what you wrote. So you don't have to have written anything before. You can come, follow the prompts of the teacher, share your work with other people, hear what other people are doing, and learn some things about the craft in the process. And then there are what I call really more traditionally workshops where, and maybe Chris can address this because Chris will be meeting with the same people Tuesday through Friday for 2.5 hours every day. So that's a chance where we will offer prompts for those. But if someone has a novel that they're working on and they want to get they may want to use Chris's prompts, not to write something new, but to apply it to the work they're already doing. So the structure of the retreat allows, there's some workshops that are just generative. You come, you have nothing, you create something. And then there are some workshops that allow you to work over a number of days on the same piece or on something you've already written and get the feedback from somebody like Chris, who over the course of the week gets to know you and your work a lot more. And I don't know, Chris, you may have a different, you teach more than I do, but that's how I think of
I would say, I mean, the way that I'm sort of imagining it is the initial day. Oh, I mean, I feel like I have knowledge about how publishing is working right now in 2023, because, my last book came out in 2021. I have another one coming out in July this year and another one in December, and an anthology after that, probably, I don't know, in a year and a half. So it's just, I've worked with different editors, different publishers, and it's just been interesting to me because I haven't been this deep with the whole New York thing before, and it's even in the early 2000s when I had limited access to it. It's changed a lot, and I think that writers, it's useful information that I'd like to pass on at that initial meeting to give all of these creatives sort of something to consider as they move forward with what they're working on. And then the rest, I mean, I don't want to be the focus of what I'm doing. The focus should be them and their work. So it's just sort of like, if I imagine, when it comes to creative writing, I imagine the what the students are writing as sort of the curriculum. I mean, that's the course material for the sessions. So so hopefully, and I've read a lot of the little bios that a lot of the participants sort of wrote up and shared. And I mean, I'm interested in seeing what they're trying to do and help in any way I can to sort of guide them forward.
One thing that makes this retreat, I'm so proud of this, and it's distinctive, I think, is from the very beginning, it's always been open admissions. You send in your check, you get a spot. And I've wondered over time whether it should be selective. Should people submit something and then, they get picked to be in the retreat? I've also wondered, when people come, we have 24 writers, should we group them by experience level? So all the more advanced writers in one group, all the newbies in one group, the people who are in the middle in another group. Or should we continue to group them by genre, fiction, nonfiction, poetry, and let it be a mix? And every year when I ask people, they love the mix. And I think that's so cool, because I wondered, why is that they like the mix? And I think the more experienced people feel like they can just do their work and they don't have to feel competitive. Like, they're doing what they're doing and it's in a mix of people. So they're not competing with anybody else. And the less experienced people have the incredible opportunity to meet writers who are further along on their own paths. And then we have some people who aren't even writers. We have one woman coming to the retreat who is a very accomplished, well-known painter. She's not even a writer, but she's doing a series of paintings that are inspired by Hawaii, and she wants to come to the retreat and write poetry about color because she thinks it'll help her painting. So I love that there's just a kind of openness, and we can cross-pollinate in a way, and there's not competition. So it's something that you can learn from someone like Chris McKinney about his experiences, or, learn from me. Catherine Waddell, Takara will be we're going to have a panel in the middle of the week, and Chris and I will both be on it with us, just sharing our experiences of publishing. That's not the focus of the retreat. The focus is writing and craft, but, we're just gathering all these people who can share as Chris was saying, their experiences and, just what the writing life is really like. So I like that it's such a mixture of people and genres and, writers and non-writers. You have to be creative. You can't just come to have a cheap vacation. You do need to be a writer or an artist, but I like that aspect of it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And let me jump in to reinforce Chris. And Chris, I think it's great that you're knowledgeable about the publishing side of writing, because so many of the writers that I work with, are looking forward to publishing. And when I went to the Iowa Writers Summer Workshop many years ago, that section that I took made a big difference in not only my writing, but my life, because really got me focused. They had all these writers from all over the country there giving classes. And I decided to take the only section that they had that year that wasn't helmed by a writer, was helmed by a publicist. And the section was, and I was with a very dear friend of mine who was taking the poetry section, which was great. She was a great poet and still is, by the way. But I wanted to take the section that called the first 10 pages of the novel. And everybody in that section, there were 12 people in the section, all of us had to bring the first 10 pages to share with everybody else and talk about and, really get down to the first 10 pages, because what he was telling us was that if your first 10 pages don't fly, you're probably not going to fly with anybody who wants to publish it. And anybody who wants to read it, that beginning is so important to get you off. And that was, watershed for me. So I like the idea that you're open to everything, Connie, and that you're working at different things and trying different things. That's a major, major plus.
Well, every writer is where he or she or they are on their own writing path. And so our job, Chris, me, the other instructors, is to just help them advance on their own path. And other paths are irrelevant. It's just, where are you and how can you move forward? I want to just add one more thing. In addition to the kind of deep dive that people will be able to do with Chris and really generating some new stuff, I'm really excited because we added the extra day. I get to teach a workshop that I love called Sin and Syntax, which is based on my book, which is all about polishing your prose. So that goes to what you're saying, Ken, about the first 10 pages, because sometimes people hear that and like, okay, my first 10 pages have to be really good. What's good? Is it the deep stuff that Chris is going to get out of you in his workshop, and that, all that you're doing with working on fiction? But how do you make your sentences sing? That's important too. And I'm just really excited because we added this extra day. I get to do that workshop on the very last day to give people some tools to actually take what they've written all week and then just, perk it up a little bit, give it a little polish, and get closer to those 10 pages that you'll be proud of.
Well, I'd like to go on forever, but we've run out of time. I told Connie and Chris that this thing goes fast, and it does. And I'd certainly like to invite them back again, maybe after sometime this summer, after the retreat, and you fill us in a little bit more about that interesting November workshop that you're going to do. I'd certainly like that because, like I said, we're just a little bit out of time, and I want to thank you both for taking the time. I know it's a very busy time for both of you, and I really appreciate your sharing. And I hope that, like I said, I see you again. So
thank you. Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say to the people watching, in 2 weeks, I hope you return, because in 2 weeks, we're going to have the joy of travel. And I've got a very special guest, Mary, who's coming down. She lives in Alaska, and she just got back from a trip to Antarctica. She went from north to south, from one tip to the other. She's got some pictures and the joy of doing it. And like Connie and Chris were saying, we're now doing things that we haven't had as much opportunity to do during the coronavirus. And one of that was gathering with people. The other thing is traveling. So we're going to be able to do that in 2 weeks. So hope you'll join us then, same time, same station. And thanks a lot to Think Tech Hawaii staff, including Ash, who worked with us today, Michael and Jay and Haley and everybody else. And most of all, thank you for those in the audience for being with us. Aloha.
Thank you so much for watching Think Tech Hawaii. If you like what we do, please like us and click the subscribe button on YouTube and the follow button on Vimeo. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and donate to us at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.